Welcome, you're listening to Passages. I'm Drew, and I'm with Jason and Tim tonight. We're really excited to be able to be with you. Glad you joined us. We're now on all the podcasting platforms, which I'm sure there are some out there that we're not on, but you can check us out on Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and if you're more sophisticated than that, I can't help you. I don't know. You can probably figure out better than I can how to get your platform of choice to listen to our feed. That's about as technical as I get. So I'm getting us started tonight. I got an article here. You know, Tim, you brought us a story about an old lady, so I thought I'd just keep the old lady thing going.
Okay, good deal.
This is about the oldest woman in the world right now. So she's in Spain. Her name is Maria Brañas. She's 116 years old, and she has shared with us crucial ingredients to her long life.
All right.
Meanwhile, scientists are totally ignoring what she's saying led to her long life and are studying her DNA. Because it couldn't be what she thinks it is. It has to be,
It has to fit their narrative, right?
The genes,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So, here's the story. A Spanish super grandmother is the oldest woman in the world, surviving COVID, a civil war, not our civil war, but the Spanish Civil War, I'm assuming, a deadly earthquake, and a major fire. Incredibly, the 116-year-old has no health complications other than hearing and mobility issues. So she does have health complications.
You can't say she has no health complications and then say, but she can't do this or that. But at 116, if it's limited to those two things,
she can't hear or walk, but she's in perfect health.
You're doing an obituary for somebody. He was only 55 years old. I can't figure out what was happening to him. He had no health complications except for cancer and heart disease. Anyway, she had no cardiovascular problems, and she can recall stories from the age of 4 with ease. So the researchers are taking DNA samples from the supercentenarian in a bid to discover groundbreaking secrets to disease and age that can uncover the key to massively lengthening human life. She previously shared cutting out toxic people, avoiding excess, and eating natural yogurt every day as crucial ingredients to her long life. So there's some people talking about how clear she is and how she has mobility issues, which you would expect. But I wanted to get down to her advice. So she said, I've always eaten little but everything, and I've never followed any regime. I have not suffered from any illness or been through an operating room. She credited her long life to having order, tranquility, good connection with family and friends, contact with nature, emotional stability, lots of positivity, and away from toxic people, as well as genes and luck. I think that's about as good a recipe for long life as you're going to find. I think I've found, and just anecdotally talking to people, that if you have a purpose in life and you're generally happy and you got good people around you and you don't eat in excess or have any habits to excess and you have good genes and good luck, you might live beyond the age of 100. But I wanted to get down to researchers have identified this says 9 common practices residents of the blue zones. Those are the zones where the oldest people are. Greece, Italy, Costa Rica, California, and Japan. I don't know why they couldn't say the United States, but they said California. Maybe there's a little subtle idea that California is no longer in the United States. These 9 common practices may explain why they live longer lives than people elsewhere. Dubbed the Power 9, they fall into categories ranging from diet and exercise to social life and include natural movement, having purpose, and limiting stressors. So I was just curious when they brought up this blue zone, and I went to Wikipedia, trusted news source, and just looked up the top 10 longest living human beings according to this. And number 1 is a woman from France. She lived 122 years. That's the max. Does that surprise you?
Is she still living? She's dead. Okay.
None of the top 10 are alive. The oldest living person is the woman I was talking about from Spain. She's 116.
And this is like the oldest since some point in time.
This woman is in this list, but she's the oldest living, and she's not until like...
I mean, Methuselah's not in the list, right? I mean...
hey...
Where's old 969
What good is this list? Yeah, this is, I guess, modern.
Modern times
modern
or whatever.
Long life.
Probably 1800s or...
Yeah.
Do you think she ever went to Wendy's and had a Baconator? That's my question.
She said she ate everything. She just ate little, but ate everything.
Well, she didn't have a Baconator because there's no such thing as little in the Baconator
She got a junior cheeseburger, and she wrapped half of it back up and ate it the next day.
Now which I've
not
seen
much
a lot of people do that kind of
not
thing.
much of a life right there.
I mean, it does raise the question, do you want to live to be 116
No.
and not finish your Baconator? I don't know. But on this list, I got France, Japan, United States, France, Japan, Canada, Jamaica, Italy, Japan, United States. So the U.S. has 2 of the top 10. And by the way, this ranges from 122 years to 117 years. But as in the article, maybe it was only in California.
Could be.
Right.
Right.
At one point, Alabama had a man that lived over 110 years. I remember that being in the news when I first moved here. I don't think he was in the best of health, but, I mean, he was still existing.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you want to live that long?
It depends on what kind of shape you're in.
I'm hoping to make it to maybe half that. That'd be a good starting point for me, half of 116. That'd be a good starting point. Tim,
I'm at your starting
you
point,
have
buddy.
made it. Congratulations. But I mean, I want to get through my 50s and 60s, and then we'll worry about what comes down the road.
I was kind of disappointed. I was wanting to read this and hear a lot of these stories. There'll be some kind of vice that I've smoked my whole life or something like that, but nothing surprising here.
Yeah, I think the eating little but everything is probably pretty good advice.
That's kind of a European thing, right?
I think so.
Like I hear in France, they don't worry about how fatty things are, and they'll eat pastries, but they just, unlike Americans, they won't eat 12 of them.
Yeah.
Like a whole dozen Krispy Kremes in one sitting.
I'm not sure they have a Krispy Kreme, because otherwise I'm not sure they could keep from doing that.
Talk to us when you get a Krispy Kreme.
I mean, when the Hot Ones light is on, it's a rule. You have to eat all 12.
That's right. When you get home, the box has to be empty.
That's right.
So who's the oldest person that we know? Just
currently living?
Yeah.
Liesl
Brother
Evans.
Liesl?
Yeah, it's got to be Liesl.
96. Yeah.
And
I mean, of course he's in assisted living now, but I mean, he was in good health till
92.
Yeah.
90 pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I preached a funeral for a woman who was 104.
Wow.
And that was kind of neat. I went back to whatever year it was that she was born and talked about key moments in history for that year. And it was just another time,
Well, you think at 116,
totally
so that would have
world.
been born
1907.
Wow.
I mean, just the fact she
You
survived
didn't
that
even
long.
use any scratch paper for that. You just
I had thought about it a few minutes ago.
Okay.
So, I mean, she predated, let's see here, the automobile, flight,
movies,
air conditioning. I couldn't make it 50 years without air conditioning.
Air conditioning's not that old.
No, it's not. But it is necessary,
Oh, my.
especially here in the great state of Alabama.
It's still necessary at my house right now.
Oh, mine was running when I left. Absolutely. So while we're on the age theme, I want to jump into my story because it ties into age too.
Good.
We seem to have an age theme throughout this. We've had the 104-year-old that went parachuting, skydiving, now this. So this is maybe a sad one for some people, but guys, this is off the Associated Press. I heard about it on the radio, and I started looking for this article for our podcast, and world's oldest dog ever dies in Portugal, aged 31.
Oh my!
Now that's not in dog years. That's in how many years?
People years.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna throw a flag on this and say that I can't really believe this has happened. But a 31-year-old dog in Portugal that had been ranked as the world's oldest dog ever has died, his owner said Monday. So this is dated on the 23rd. The guard dog called Bobby died over the weekend in a veterinary hospital. He lived on a farm in Portugal with 4 cats. He was born on May 11th, 1922, when his owner was just 8 years old.
Wait. When was this story printed?
The story was printed today.
1992, maybe?
I said 1992. What did I say?
No,
you said 22.
1922.
This dog is
good
living
grief.
101
I'm
years
still
old.
I'm still dating myself back in 1992. 92. So when his owner was just 8 years old, and his owner is now 100-something years. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm wondering if at some point there was the old goldfish switcheroo that happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I call this into so 30
Dogs don't get anywhere near that old.
So while looking this up today, this is a medium-sized dog. I see his picture here. It looks like just your nice little friendly farm dog. So I looked it up, and if a dog, let's say a medium-sized dog, this is 21 to 50 pounds, which I think this dog falls into. If a medium-sized dog lives 16 years, in human years, according to Fetch by WebMD's little graphic here, at 16 years, that's 87 human years. So
you're telling me it's not always multiplied by 7?
No, it's year one. 1 year is equal in all sizes and breeds to a human being 15. Year 2, 24. Year 3, 28. Year 4, 32. So roughly, if you multiply it,
the world doesn't make sense anymore.
Roughly, if you multiply it by 7, the numbers come out okay.
This.
Yeah. But if you do 7 times 31.
I just 217.
I just can't believe this is
What's
really
the general
true.
lifespan of a dog? 50, like if they're lucky, 15 years. Right?
Do you have a fenced yard or not fenced yard? Because that's an important question when it comes to the lifespan.
Because of
natural causes.
Natural causes.
Right.
Natural causes.
A good dog, 16 years. I think the two we had before lived 15, 16 years.
And that's with you praying imprecations on them daily.
They did outlive their welcome.
Couldn't get that word out, but
yeah.
Whatever curses from heaven down upon one's animal is called. That's what Jason did.
They did outlive their welcome by a few years. I will admit
I had a dog that lived 17 years, and those last 2 years were rough.
I want to say my parents had one time that got close to 20 years, 21 years, maybe.
At 31.
I like your replacement theory. I'm thinking of UGA. Right?
Yeah. That's
so
exactly
what are we on?
right,
We're on UGA 6 or UGA 8
we're on
or whatever.
UGA 11.
Okay.
UGA 10,
and so,
UGA 11.
Those English bulldogs are a freak of nature.
Whatever a great Portuguese name would be of a little boy. Little Johnny goes off to school. And
some of those breeds
Boba next shows up.
Experiments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like they're not supposed to even live.
Yeah. This one,
you created a mutant here.
Yeah. Are you talking about all those dogs that they tell me are hypoallergenic?
Yeah. What about the cats with no fur? That's not natural.
So let's see here. It says he is a purebred Rafeiro do Alentejo.
Sure.
Google that.
Who has an average life expectancy of some 10 to 14 years. Now, math guy down here.
And he doubled it.
How many standard deviations is 31 away from 10 to 14?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not ready for that tonight.
Yeah.
We're just doing multiplication down here.
But that story, it smells a little bit. Just has a little bit of an odor.
Is the name Inquirer on the paper
this
that you
is
drew this from.
AP story.
That's an AP story.
Now, of course, we all
sometimes like the Inquirer.
Yeah, we all know what you meant by the goldfish thing, but what did you mean by the goldfish thing?
Well, maybe I've heard a story of somebody that their child's goldfish died, and hypothetically speaking, they went to the store while the kid was at school, bought a new goldfish, and put it in the fish tank, and the kid never caught on.
Dad, I think something's wrong with it. No, it's just sleeping right now. It'll be fine when you get back.
Yeah. And that lasted for a while.
Well, Goldie likes to sleep on his back, doesn't he, Dad? Yes, he does.
Daddy's doing the backstroke
He's learned how to
again.
tread water. This is a smart fish.
We'll leave names and comments about who that story is about. But.
All right. Okay. My story comes from Sky News, which you would think would be an international story, but actually comes from here in the States in Atlanta, GA. Woman returns from holiday to find her Atlanta home mistakenly demolished.
Oops.
You have the headline in front of you.
That was my backup story in case you took the dog story tonight.
I've got to broaden my search.
I think you and I are searching the exact same places.
Yeah. A neighbor phoned Susan Hodgson when she was away and asked if someone had been hired to tear down her property because workers had just, quote, demolished the whole house. Susan Hodgson found a pile of rubble in place of what used to be her longtime family property when she returned from holiday, she told WAGA-TV. "I'm just left with a big old mess," Miss Hodgson said. She said a neighbor called while she was away and asked if someone had been hired to tear down the vacant house. I said no, and she said, "Well, there's someone over there who just demolished the whole house and tore the whole thing down." When the neighbor confronted the workers, Miss Hodgson said she was told to, quote, "shut up and mind her own business." Miss Hodgson sent a family member over who asked the workers for a permit. When one of the workers checked the permit, Miss Hodgson said he admitted he was at the wrong address.
Oops.
The house did not have anyone living there when it was demolished, Miss Hodgson said. "We keep it boarded, covered, grass cut, and the yard's clean. Taxes are paid, and everything's up on it." She said she's not heard anything from the company responsible. So that.
So she didn't live in this house.
She did not live in the house. So
where was the house located again?
In Georgia, yeah.
In Atlanta.
Or Atlanta area or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, that's somebody got fired, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That's a big mistake.
I like how he was so sure of himself when he was first confronted.
Shut up and get out of
Mind
here.
your own business.
I'm here to tear a house down. Permit. No, we're not at the right place.
I'm thinking before you start to knock down the walls, you walk out to the mailbox and just maybe double check that street address.
Yeah.
Maybe. But if the house, now in his defense, if the house is boarded up and is abandoned,
certainly we're at the right place. Nobody's here. It's, they even cut the grass so we could easily get to it to knock it down.
Yeah, he came in like a wrecking ball. There's no doubt
there
about that.
There had to be some TVs and furniture in there.
Oh, there was some possessions. There had to be some
That has to be
stuff.
a bit unusual in a demolition situation.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's like is that a 55-inch, a 60-inch?
I think we just hit a refrigerator.
That
was that a goldfish?
That would be pretty. So does insurance cover that? Your homeowners, I wouldn't think that would be covered under your homeowner's insurance. It's not.
I'm thinking this one's going to be resolved in court.
I have a feeling somebody is calling the Georgia version of the attorney that has his name on every billboard in.
Who could be a sponsor of this podcast if he chooses to do so?
If only he would call.
Call me, Alabama.
That's right. All right, guys. I don't have a news story per se. I had a conversation yesterday that reminded me of something I just wanted to share with you guys. You've heard me talk about the show The Chosen.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen it?
No.
No pressure. I'm not telling you have to see it or anything.
No, I feel a little ashamed that I haven't. Thanks.
Some of our listeners have probably seen it.
I've seen episodes. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Okay, so you've seen some episodes.
Sure.
Yeah, it's for those who don't know what it is. I think most people have heard about it before. It's a television show about Jesus and the disciples, and it doesn't just try to tell the Bible story and stick to book, chapter, and verse. It's more of a character study, which kind of makes it original. I think everything in the past has just tried to tell the story, and they don't get involved in the characters so much, which has made it really interesting, but it's also made them take some liberties. And you have to decide if you're willing to, if it's worth it. You know, some people, I don't think people are as worried these days about television and film presentations of the Gospels being by the book as they were when I was growing up. I mean, I think that's the only debate you would hear when I was growing up is, well, there was I don't know, they said Mary Magdalene was a prostitute and she wasn't a prostitute, that kind of stuff.
I've also heard, though, just from people that I've talked to that have seen it, that they didn't take as many liberties as some of the big Hollywood productions that were biblically based, like what was the one with the flood? I don't remember what the name
Noah.
of. Yeah,
Noah. I think
that
it's called
they
Noah.
weren't quite as.
Well, it seems like the people who made The Chosen actually like Jesus.
That's good.
Which makes them different than a lot of the people who make Bible movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, check it out if you haven't done it. It's good. You can see it on the Angel app, or you can go to angel.com or something like that.
I think Millie was telling me that it's actually on Netflix.
It is right now, yeah.
I think they've got like one season on Netflix,
Okay.
which, I mean,
that
means people are watching. It was also a crowdsourced production, which is really cool. Really cool. But there was season 3 is the most recent season, and they had it out in theaters last Christmas. And I went to see it. It was just the first 2 episodes. I saw it on the big screen, and it was okay. It's more for TV. It didn't really move me as a movie. But there was a scene in episode 2 of season 3 that was really special to me. Now, as I said, to tell the character stories, they take some liberties and they do some guesswork. And some people may not like that, and that's fine. Some of these disciples, we don't know a lot about their backstory. One famous example is Matthew, the tax collector. They present him as someone with autism. They never come out and say it. I mean, back then they didn't know anything about autism, but he seems to be high-functioning autistic. And I've heard people criticize it. I've heard people celebrate it. Another one they take liberties with is James the Less. Now, James the Less we know nothing about, right? We know that he had a nickname that could mean the less. Some translations have James the Younger. And in The Chosen, Jesus calls him Little James because John's brother, James the fisherman, he was Big James, and then there's Little James. I don't know. They're trying to humanize these characters, and they were human.
Yeah.
Something made him less. What have you generally heard? I mean, I've heard maybe he was younger.
That's the primary one I've heard.
Yeah, or maybe he was shorter.
I've heard one that he came from a different background, a lesser background.
Well, in The Chosen, they give him a disability. He's lame. He has a mobility issue, and he walks with a cane. And it comes up in episode 2, and it's just really moving. And so I'll tell you why it's on my mind right now. I was at my boxing group for Parkinson's yesterday, and a friend of mine asked me if I'd seen this. And I said, yeah, I'd kind of forgotten about it. She said, I watched it 4 times today. It was just really moving. And so I was going to see what y'all thought about it.
Just
let's try to retell the scene.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote some of the words down, but some of it I just have to paraphrase or it'd take too long. So James pulls Jesus aside, and this is before the limited commission, when he's sending the disciples out to heal people.
Mm-hmm.
And James says, "You mean I'm going to be able to heal people?" And Jesus said, "Yes." And he said, "I find it hard to believe that you want me to heal people when you haven't healed me." And Jesus says, "Do you want to be healed?" And he says, "Of course." And he wants to know, he says, "Why haven't you healed me?" And Jesus said, "Because I trust you." And Jesus says, "I could heal you and you'd have a good story to tell." He said, "But think of the story you'd have if I don't heal you, to know how to proclaim that you still praise God in spite of this, to show people you can be patient with your suffering here on earth because you know you'll spend eternity with no suffering." Not many people can understand that. James says, "But the others are so much stronger." And Jesus said, "I don't want to hear that from you ever again. Are you fast? Do you look impressive when you walk? Maybe not. But these are things that the Father doesn't care about. You are going to do more for me than most people ever dream. Many are healed or not healed because the Father has a plan for them, which may be a mystery." And Jesus keeps talking to him. He says, "Hold on a little longer. When you find true strength through your weakness, the impact will last generations. You will be healed. It's only a matter of time."
Wow.
Now, I wish we had the capability to have played that for you guys and for the audience to hear the actors say it. I don't even know if that would be legal, but it would be so much better than me trying to stammer through it in my notes. But the scene, the premise of the scene is just very interesting to me. And, a very interesting theme to me is the silence of God when we suffer. And I write a lot about that. I think a lot about that. I've wrestled with that a lot personally, as I'm sure you have. You're going through something, and you pray, and you're told God heals, He answers prayer, and then you don't get the answer you anticipate or that you want. You may feel at first that you're not getting anything, and you wonder why that is. For me, I study Luke 11, Luke 18, where Jesus encourages His disciples to pray continuously or pray persistently. Why would He do that if God gives you things right away? There'd be no need for it. So there should be an expectation on us to have that space or silence or whatever you want to call it, to think about what God really wants us to be. And it goes back to this thing said by Jesus in The Chosen. He said, "Do you look impressive when you walk? Maybe not. But these are things the Father doesn't care about." It makes you ask, okay, what I'm praying for, God must not care about. Or maybe He doesn't care about it as much as something else that I could be gaining later on if I persist in prayer. Very interesting premise they came up with. It's not in the Bible. The themes are.
But it's a great thought. And
it's a very profound thought.
Yeah. I think about Paul, right? The thorn in the flesh.
There's some Paul in here because he says, when you find true strength through your weakness, the impact will last generations. That's 2 Corinthians 12.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you imagine if this was actually the case, that here's this man who has not been healed of something, and he's out healing others, and that in itself would seem to teach a story, right? I mean, I do this on behalf of Jesus to confirm His word, but it's not required that it be done for me, and and maybe that story about, we're all going to be healed at some point. Those
that
who
was
are
a great
followers.
way to end him. He said, "You will be healed. It's only a matter of time." And that's the thing to remember is, if you recover from an illness, I mean, this is a real downer after we've been talking about people and dogs that live a long time, but I mean, you're going to die. Lazarus was raised from the dead, and he still died. He had to die twice. So it's as important as physical health is, it's not the most important thing. It can't be, because it's going to break down. Maybe when you're young, maybe when you're old, but it's going to break down. And even 116 years is really not that long in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. When you think about the things that in terms of this world sort of make us weak, right? I mean, sometimes it's sickness, sometimes it's, just whatever the world uses to tear us down. How we deal with those things has so much to do with our real strength, right? I mean, it's like sometimes, if you just skate through life and everything seems to, come up roses for you or whatever. I mean, in some sense, it's a great blessing, that people don't have to deal with challenges along the way, but in another sense, it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't build any character.
These challenges make us who we are.
Yeah. They also teach us to trust in God. I mean, I think one of the most impactful things about being a Christian is knowing that no matter how bad things get here, whether it's physical sickness, mental illness, loss, the craziness of the world, that no matter what we have here, at the end of our life or the second coming of Christ, whichever happens first, if we're in Christ, man, what a blessing. I mean, we're going to be given new resurrection bodies. We're going to be taken up to be in the presence of God, and we're going to spend eternity praising Him and bathed in His light, in His presence. That, it's easy to get bogged down on our struggles, whether they're physical, mental, whatever, here on earth. But part of acknowledging God in our lives is understanding that what we have here is temporal, and that it's for a limited time.
That's a hard thing to accept.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah.
We're reminded of it every day.
Yeah.
So.
But I feel for those that don't have the hope of Christ. And if you don't have the hope of Christ, pick up your Bible and read. Come talk to us. Let us help you, because there's hope in Christ. There's hope in our faith. Absolutely. And without that hope, those things are even harder to get through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something we could come back to when we get to our quotation.
Yeah.
There is a connection there, but maybe you can bring us up. I kind of brought us down a little. Mood.
I feel like
the mood
almost.
Is low.
I feel almost inappropriate after such a profound statement. And
I got one on Bozo the Clown,
and very. I mean, it's a very.
Rough
you were very honest and very candid there, and I don't know. It's going to be tough to go into this, but. So
I think that's the nature of what we're building.
Right. I know.
There's no.
I know it's
there's
good.
No rhyme or reason.
We never talk about what we're bringing. So
we never know
how we're going to transition from one thing
to
another. So.
Let's reminisce a little bit, because I like to reminisce of days of old. So, you know how much I love holidays. They are such an impactful part of my everyday life. One of my least favorite of all holidays is upon us. Is it Tuesday? Is Halloween? I despise the holiday. I don't really know why. Mostly I'm scared of everything, and people dress up in scary ways and scare me.
Is that it, though, really?
I don't know. I think it's just the aggravation of it. It's probably a lot of things. But
it's sort of a low hassle holiday from like a parent's perspective, right? It's not like you gotta go.
Maybe now that our kids are teenagers, maybe. Do you not remember the lugging the kids around the neighborhood days?
Yeah, that's true.
So I thought it would be an interesting thing just to go back and reminisce about your worst costume and your favorite costume in your childhood. Because, when we were kids, and I will admit, I'm the youngest of the three. Not by much, but I'm the youngest of the three. Well, not by much to Drew. Tim by a little bit longer. But when we were kids, you didn't go to Party City or to the costume store.
A lot of homemade stuff.
Well, there was a reason we didn't go to Party City.
Yeah. Everything. There was no such thing. You didn't go on Amazon and buy a costume, and we never went to Walmart and bought a costume that I can remember. So all ours were pretty much homemade. Yeah. I'll start with my worst. Okay. So imagine this: a kid walks in, walks to your door, knocks, trick or treat, and you open the door to a child wearing red sweatpants, a red sweatshirt, a Tupperware bowl on his head, and a poster board Heinz ketchup label wrapped around him. And he has gone trick-or-treating as a ketchup bottle.
Was this
is
somebody that came to your house?
No, this was me. This was me.
Himself.
That's bad.
I'm not really sure how old I was, but short of the was it a mulberry bush in Peter Rabbit in the kindergarten graduation, I think that was one of my lowest costumed moments of my life. Wow. I can remember that, but we didn't have much. That was an option. I mean, you didn't go to the costume store.
Right.
You had sweatpants.
You had to invent something.
Exactly. You came up with something. And then I think the most common costume I did during those years, and I have a feeling y'all dressed as this at some point.
Are you going to say hobo?
Hobo.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. You'd go into the closet, get some of your dad's bigger clothes, old stuff, some rags, a stick.
Shoe polish on one of your teeth.
Yeah, stick with a
smudge on your face of some sort.
The stick with the handkerchief knapsack on it, and you'd go trick-or-treating like that.
Yeah.
Now, we only went to like 3 houses because we didn't live around a whole lot of people.
Well, that was our problem. Yeah. We lived in the country, and trick-or-treating was... You better be in good shape.
But let me tell you, I would take a good hobo over the ketchup bottle.
Yeah.
Yes. Probably 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And the hobo is like it's a featured move of the teenager who still wants to continue. Even today.
Yeah,
right?
I'll see them. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I live in a heavy Halloween zone.
Oh, yeah. There's special parking for your neighborhood.
Perhaps the heaviest of all. I think last Halloween we did 2 5-gallon buckets of candy, and then some friends came over. They gave their candy away, and then we closed up, turned the lights off, and they were still knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And that was at like 8:30 to 9
Which shows the disrespect of these kids today. Because when I was a kid, if your door was closed and your lights were out, we'd just egg your house. No, I'm just kidding. I never did that. To all you kids listening out there, I would never
amateurs are
do
still
that.
Just trying
I
to
might
get
kick a
candy.
hole in the pumpkin, but I would never, ever egg their house for not giving us candy.
Yeah, so, I was sitting here thinking because I don't have a great deal to contribute because I'm trying to remember Halloween costumes, and I think that you're it. So the next house up and down the road's half mile away or whatever.
That's the way it was at our house.
I seem to remember going up the hill to Mr. Lackey's, and maybe going to that house, but I don't think we really went trick-or-treating.
Well, when I was growing up, Tim, they put needles in Snickers bars.
Now that was
and apples.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I can remember my parents going through my candy before I think that was just their excuse to eat it.
Did it ever really happen, or was it? This is a side subject, but I think we've talked about this offline before.
Yeah.
Before the internet, I grew up in Texas. You were in Georgia. You were in Alabama. There are certain things like that spread across the nation, and I have no idea how these urban
hypodermic
spread.
needles in your Nestle Crunch bars.
Oh yeah.
And we may have to come back with an actual list of these things.
That would be an interesting episode for sure.
The two that I can think of are not appropriate for the show. But there were things, there was one of them I asked you, I think it was you, Tim, I asked you if you had ever heard it before, and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, you realize this is mid-'80s, pre-internet. I was in Texas,
right, and we were
you're
talking
in
about
Alabama.
how did
it's
this
not
sort
true.
of, how did this disseminate its way, as old wives' tales or whatever
Was it on
across
60
the country?
Minutes one night? Or I mean, how does this happen?
Right.
Crazy.
The power of word of mouth.
Jason, I remember a costume, and it may have been my first and last attempt at a Halloween costume. My mother hated it. It was a mask. You remember the masks that are like hard plastic on the front and just a band across the back?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you just strap it on. It wasn't a full rubber mask all the way
Oh,
over
I know,
your head.
yeah.
More like a hockey mask or whatever.
It was a monster with the eye was melting out, and it had white hair on top of it. It was just some generic monster, a ghoul, if you will, a zombie. And I don't even know if there was anything else to it but the mask.
And Mom did not like it?
Halloween day at school, and I wanted to wear it. And she hated it. I don't know how I got it. I guess my dad, in a moment of weakness, bought it for me, and I brought it home. I don't remember the details.
I also don't remember.
She absolutely hated it.
So you got to wear. I don't remember getting to wear Halloween costumes to school, but that's a big thing now.
I think it was third grade, and it's the only time I remember that.
Yeah.
But nowadays they wear whatever to school.
That is true.
Hey, it's PJ Day.
If you pay your
For
dollar,
legal.
if you wear a dollar, you can wear a hat today.
That's right. Somehow $1 modifies the school dress code in a heartbeat.
It is an interesting concept.
$1. But $1 times 300 is good money.
It sounds like I had the most traumatic costume experiences.
Sorry,
maybe I should go back and talk to the old counselor about that a little more.
Although I can't think of any costume that's sort of my favorite. My costume of yours that's my favorite is you and Butch Watts as sumo wrestlers. Really,
that was
one right there.
That was an excellent event.
Is that the costumes that had a fan in them that would blow the?
That's right. And right here where we're sitting,
when
it was the fellowship
that's
hall,
right.
we had a party here.
We did a little karaokeing in this exact area, actually.
Yeah, that was fun.
Remember that?
Pre new wing at the church building. Yeah.
So
I was so boring at those.
I'm pretty sure you came as Clark Kent.
Yeah.
And all I did was I wore a dress shirt with a blue undershirt.
And a red little piece of fabric hanging out from the back.
Just so I didn't have to dress up.
But I believe that night you brought Batman with you.
Yeah.
I did.
Which is for another night.
Batman in a little suit.
Batman in a little suit.
And that's another thing, like that scene from The Chosen. It's like I can tell you about it, but you really need the visuals to get it. We'll have to come back to that.
Absolutely.
All right. I love stories that have lists to them. I'm just a list.
I live for lists.
This is one way that AL.com
Look at the bullet
puts
points
me. 5 best places to eat barbecue in Alabama or something like that. It's like, say no more. I'm in.
Click.
Right, click. So this comes from AL.com, and it's one of my favorite topics. But I'm not going to really deal with all of them. It's one of those things that makes me yearn back to being a kid. Is that the right word to use? Yearn back? I don't know.
In days of yore.
Yeah, days of yore.
Over yonder.
10 old Alabama football traditions we miss. All right. So it talks about the old days, and the article mentions like when the Iron Bowl was at Legion Field, and I think when we were over at our last open home meeting, we were talking about. I was talking to somebody, maybe to Andrew, about the days when the Alabama-Auburn game was at Legion Field, it was a 50-50 split, and it was really interesting. Those games were fun. I got to go to one or two of them when they were like that. And this article talks about, you remember the guys who had the Tide boxes? Those guys, I think both of them have passed away. Two guys from Scottsboro always went to the Alabama games, and they had Tide boxes and a roll of toilet paper on top of them, and wore white shirts with suspenders and red pants and red ties, and you would see them invariably on like every Alabama football game. There'd be a shot in the stands, and there would be those two games. But the thing in this list that caught me, and I've probably told you all about this before, was the Bear Bryant show. All right, so today, I'm sure most college football coaches have a TV show. It's like a 30-minute recap show. I think Nick Saban has one. I'm sure that Hugh Freeze has one. Kirby Smart has one, where, they basically talk about the game from the previous day. But they're not what they used to be, because in the days of Bear in the 70s and 80s, it was very unlikely that you got to see the game the day before on Saturday. And so on Sunday, the Bear Bryant game would come on, so you would probably listen to the radio. Alabama, like every other, most other big teams would be on TV once or twice a year. That was it. And there were even rules around how many times you could be on TV. They sort of, I think, limited the product because they wanted people to go into the games. And so the Bear Bryant show would come on 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon. And it was a ritual in the state of Alabama. Pretty much everything shut down.
This is why churches met at 6 back in those days instead of 5.
It was a 60-minute show. So at 5 o'clock, you could get your clothes back on, get your suit back on, and head to the church house. That's right. So 4 o'clock, Bear Bryant comes on. And I don't think I made this part up, although it wasn't in the article. But in Alabama, if there was an NFL football game on Sunday afternoon on Channel 13 that ran the Bear Bryant show, the NFL game would stop and the Bear Bryant show would begin as the replay of yesterday's college football game. Yeah. I mean, it would preempt.
Yeah, they would just cut away from the NFL game.
They're done.
You're not messing with the Bear.
Who cares what the Dolphins are doing today? You need to see what Bama did yesterday. And so it was a rote, repetitive thing, and it would involve Bear Bryant at this blue desk. If you ever go down to Alabama, they've got the Bryant Museum, and they've got the desk in there. It's this blue desk, blue background. He's sitting here. Charlie Thornton, who's like an assistant athletic director, sitting next to him. And Charlie keeps him on cue because Bear would start rambling, and it'd be 2 hours later if he didn't have a handler. And so, he would do the old growl or whatever. You could understand part of, what he would say. But it would start with him opening up a bottle of Coca-Cola.
Of course.
And cracking open the Golden Flake chip of the day. And if you don't believe that would send you to the kitchen to get a Coke and some potato chips, I'm not sitting here.
You had to go get him out of the icebox back then, though.
That's right. Yeah. And so, what we got today, Charlie? All right, today we got some Golden Flake barbecue potato chips, and he'd pour them out, and then they would start looking at the, let's see the highlights from the first quarter, Coach. And so he had these things that he would say. And so, one of the things he would say is, "Oh, that's a goodie." Somebody make a good play or whatever, or somebody would really nail somebody, and he'd go, "Bingo!" And so, and then also he would smatter this through the show, but he would, at the end, the players who had the best game, they would throw their pictures up, and he'd say, "Well, there's old Barry Krause from down in," I'm going to make it up, down in Dothan, Alabama. Got to see his mom and daddy yesterday, George and Sue. And so, I mean, Bear Bryant was highly honored in the state of Alabama, right? So, to get your name said and mom and daddy and whatever, was big stuff. But anyhow, I think about that that show a lot because there's nothing like that anymore, right? Because all the how many things did I talk about that are so different today, right? For one thing, everybody has seen the game, and
if you want to see the highlights, you can go to your streaming choice and just watch the highlights.
Absolutely.
You can do your own show with probably better quality.
How about this? High school games are broadcast on TV now.
And so I would encourage you to go on YouTube, find an episode, watch 10 minutes of the Bear Bryant Show, watch the beginning, and see, because you're right. It'll be like, sort of the worst show you've ever seen, but it was must-see TV in the state of Alabama.
Yeah. I think it'd be funny if it was a variety show.
Yeah.
Like he has a guy come out juggling footballs, and then they go back to Bear, and he does a monologue on the game. They go back out, and there's what was one of the country music stars?
Porter Wagner.
Porter Wagner's doing a number on
the Ronnie Millsap Hour.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like to go back and watch that. I don't know. There's something quiet and nostalgic about TV from that era. And cheap, especially cheap television.
Yeah.
These days it's so flashy and loud and ADD. And there's probably one camera in the room for this.
Absolutely.
Well, and all the guys on the broadcast have on tons of makeup and lighting and sound.
In this show,
I guarantee you, Bear Bryant didn't have on no makeup.
In this show, there was one shot. It was straight on. The two of them sitting at,
and they'd show the highlights.
And then they would show the highlights, but then they would come back to them, at the end of each quarter or, at halftime or whatever. And, and Charlie Thornton would say, and at the end of the second quarter, it's Alabama 14, Tennessee 7, and then they go off the commercial. But the other thing I want you to check this out is you were talking about sort of the simplicity of it or whatever, but it'd be at 4:00. Everybody's in their places with their Coke and their Golden Flake potato chips, and you hear Denny chimes, bong, 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 and yay Alabama, Crimson.
Oh, they had a theme
That's
song.
the way that it started. Was the four chimes. It's 4:00 on Sunday afternoon, and they play the Alabama fight song, and that's the way that every show began.
And if you heard that and you didn't have your place on the couch, you were probably getting a good scolding.
That's right. We got to be there. So anyhow,
do you think the format and the beginning like that was just something that was the way they did it the first time, so that's the way they did it every other time?
I'm sure it was, right? But
we're working through some things with our podcast here that I hope will evolve from. That sounds like something they just tripped up on.
Right.
They thought, well, it worked last time. Let's do it.
People seem to like it.
And now, 50 years later, I can tell you exactly what happened, how that show began.
Yeah.
Because, it was imprinted in my mind
Truly
forever.
Appointment television.
It was, yeah.
Okay, now's the part of the show where we talk about our passage for the week. And Tim, it's your turn to give us the passage. What you got this week?
So this is episode 3, and Jason and Drew have contributed a quote so far, and so this is my opportunity. And to the surprise of neither of my brothers here, my first quote comes from John C. Maxwell, leadership guru and
you're a fanboy.
Tim's personal hero.
Like.
John Maxwell fanboy.
I am a John Maxwell fanboy. There's no disputing that. Here's the quote from John Maxwell. He says, "A man must be big enough to admit his mistakes, smart enough to profit from them, and strong enough to correct them." So that's our quote for this week. I like the 3 components of this. I think that they each have something to say, and we like to talk about these quotes, in general, and almost, in relation to our lives, and but we also like to relate them to our faith. And I think that this particular quote, to me, talks a lot about confession and repentance. And,
especially the first line.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, so when I read this one, I thought this will be good, as we talk about daily living, and we also tie this back to a lot of the things that the Bible teaches us about these same kind of principles.
I really like this quote, how it seems that each statement, a man must be big enough to admit his mistakes, smart enough to profit from them, strong enough to correct them. I think they all build on each other a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the whole quote hinges on the first sentence or the first phrase, that a man must be big enough to admit his mistakes. Because until you can admit your mistakes, you can't profit from them. I don't think you can learn from them very well, and you surely can't correct them. And I think probably the biggest hindrance to people going through this cycle is the shame and the fear involved of admitting when you're wrong, admitting when you've made that mistake, confessing, hey, I've messed up. Let me see how I can grow from this.
Yeah. At the risk of sounding pretentious, this really is just getting us to think about it. It's not me trying to be smarter than John Maxwell. I'm not. The verbs, I think he got the verbs right. Admit, profit, correct, what Jason was just saying. I think the subjects, the first words, need a little change, because you're not big enough to admit your mistakes. You're humble enough.
Yeah.
And I know what, be big enough to admit your mistake. Yeah. I get it, but
I had in my notes requires humility.
So big enough means humble, actually. And it's not, you don't have to be smart to profit from your mistakes. In fact, you don't get smart until you profit from your mistakes. That's how you learn. So maybe wise enough would be better. And the third one, I really am coming to distrust the power of willpower. And so on the third one, you're not strong enough to correct your mistakes. That suggests that you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Maybe faithful is a better word there. Coming at it from a Christian perspective. And, again, I'm just trying to think about what is required to do these three things: humility, wisdom, and faith. And I want to say more about the willpower in a minute. But just to get started.
Well, and I think, too, that the statement, a man must be big enough to admit his mistakes, doesn't exactly correlate with strong enough to correct them. Because if you're strong enough to correct them, you don't have to admit them. Admitting your mistakes is relying on someone else. If you are strong enough to correct your mistake yourself, I mean, the idea of strong enough to correct them, like you said, that talks a lot about self-reliance. And I wrote this down: the myth of self-reliance, being in control, keeps us from admitting mistakes.
Yeah.
Part of what gets us in trouble as humans is thinking we've got all the answers and we can sort it out on our own. And we spend a lot of times trying to work through our own problems in secret, alone, trying to do it ourselves without admitting to God or to another or to a friend what we're struggling with.
Yeah. I think the first part of this, the idea of admitting our mistakes, I think that version of being big enough is not necessarily in terms of being supreme.
Right.
It's really of, sometimes we have to step up.
We have to man up.
We have to man up.
Yeah, it's a figure of speech. Be the bigger man. I'm going to be the bigger man.
Right.
And forgive or something. I get that.
Yeah. And so I think, that part of it, this first component, I think back to sort of a silly example, but remember the television show Happy Days? Arthur Fonzarelli on Happy Days, right? He was the guy who was always right. He couldn't even say, I was wrong, right? You remember he would say, I was
yeah.
It wouldn't even come out of his mouth or whatever. And, that's a silly illustration, but sometimes if we're not careful, we build ourselves up with so much pride that we lose the ability, or it's very, very difficult for us to say that we're wrong. And really, that's a character flaw. It prevents us from growing. It certainly prevents us from living faithfully if we're not willing to confess our faults to one another.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love what James says in James 5:16. He says, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. So the what of that is confess your sins to one another and pray for one another. And the why is to be healed. I mean, that's where healing comes from, is through open confession, admitting your mistakes to one another. And it's something that we probably don't do a great job of.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't want to move away from the first point too fast, but I know we're kind of short on time, and I want to talk about all three of these points. And so I just want to say about the second one, being smart enough to profit from them, that failure is an opportunity. And if you don't fail at things, you're not trying to grow. You should expect to make mistakes. You should expect to encounter obstacles and problems. And that's not it's not a sign that you shouldn't be doing this, fill in the blank, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to learn from the failure, from the mistakes, and profit from that experience going forward and not making that mistake again, but probably encountering new mistakes, new failures that will teach you more. Yep. You don't get from A to Z in just a couple of seconds. In this life, there's learning and growing, listening, trial and error, development of character, all these things. And if you'll learn to value the journey, you'll love your life a lot more. How many people have told us that they got to the top and when they got there, it didn't feel like they thought it would feel? I've read interviews with celebrities. I'm thinking of one in which someone who won a Grammy said that he was almost suicidal after he won the Grammy because he didn't know what his life was about anymore. And that's not valuing the process. It's making your whole life about this end. When you get there, you think, well, now I've done this. There's nothing else for me to do.
Right.
And I think there's something interesting with admitting his mistakes or admitting our mistakes and profiting from them that ties together. If the three of us can admit our mistakes to one another, we'll profit from our own mistakes and learn to grow from those. But we'll also profit from each other's mistakes. And I think that's part of why confessing our mistakes or our sins or our problems to one another is so important, is the cheapest, easiest, simplest way to learn from mistakes is to learn from somebody else's.
Yeah.
And that's what confession and being able to share and admit our problems to each other gives us. It's not just a place to confess it, but it gives us a place to heal and to help others around us heal and hopefully avoid some of those same pitfalls that we've all fallen into.
Right. How many conversations do you ever have with somebody? We've had conversations together where we've talked about problems that we have, and I don't think we've ever left one of those conversations where it's all been about what one of us is struggling with. It ends up being about what all of us are struggling with. It may be the same thing, maybe different things, but that's one thing that confession does for us. Confession has a contagious nature to it. Mm-hmm. And so when sometimes we think about confession in our world as someone going down front, right? And it's like this individual thing, although it is a collective because people embrace that person and we pray for that person, that kind of thing. But I believe in its truest sense, right? When we really confess to one another, it's a contagious and interactive kind of thing where when somebody has the courage to do that, it just opens the door for all of us to, to say, well, here's what I'm struggling with. Right?
Well, and it's freeing because you figure out you're not alone in your problems.
Right.
That's a very freeing thing.
Yeah. I want to talk about this third part of it, too, strong enough to correct them. That sounds like willpower. And willpower is what most of us try to use to change bad habits or sin in our lives, or even just to, maybe it's not anything moral, just doing better at something, even like trying to take better care of ourselves. And you know how successful willpower is whenever you start out with a New Year's resolution. It's about as successful. It's successful for about a month or
maybe.
Less. And there's science behind this, that willpower is a limited resource, that it's kind of like a battery, and it can't last very long before it has to be recharged. And so you have to help your willpower. It's an important element in change and growth, but it's not, if you're only using willpower, you're going to fail. You're not going to change. And so I jotted down a few things that you can do to help your willpower. You can remove opportunity. If you're struggling with sin in particular, you can remove opportunities to fail from your environment. You can make a plan. Like, this is what I'm going to do. This is the routine I'm going to follow. These are the goals that I've set. You can think ahead. You can create new habits. There's some evidence that physiologically our brains change when we change repeated behaviors. There are neural pathways that get very strong whenever we do something for months and years on end, and you can change them with great difficulty, but over time, if you keep doing something repeatedly, you'll form new neural patterns in your brain. But the most important thing is to find your why, find your reason, your motivation, and remind yourself constantly, and this is why I'm correcting these mistakes. This is what makes this a mistake. And confession is an important part of that, because when you're keeping it hidden, you're under all kinds of illusions. But when you let it out into the air, you see who you're hurting, you see how devastating it is, how destructive it is. I keep gravitating over to the matter of sin, but this applies to all kinds of failures and attempts at growth.
I think if, just to take this in a different direction for just a minute, is if you think about your profession, right, and the way that you interact with others, there's a big component here, both in a work environment and just in relationships. People who think they have everything figured out really are just a miserable sort, right? I mean, for one thing, they're going to stay up here on this first thing where they're unable to think that they're ever wrong, and we all interact with people who have a real struggle with that sometimes, and they'll spend so much energy. You can, let me show you where you're wrong. Let me, don't confuse me with the facts kind of people, right?
Yeah.
And so just this whole idea of being willing to, admit we make mistakes and being able, and we're willing to adjust to it, really when it comes to not just a matter of sin, but like people that we interact with every day, different ideas in your job, that kind of thing. If you're willing to listen to others, listen to other points of view, realize when somebody has a better idea than you do, be willing to turn and don't make it have to be like, a monumental thing for you to adjust your mind in a direction. Mm-hmm. Have an open mind about things and be willing to turn and say, you got a great point there. Let's do that. It just makes your whole world better. Mm-hmm. If you're not always if your first step is not always, I'm right and I'll listen to you long enough for me to prepare to tell you why you're wrong. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I liked when you said it doesn't have to be a monumental thing or something like that. I think we blow ourselves way out of proportion, which is what pride is. You get the big head. And I like the saying, and I've seen it attributed to numerous sources, nothing is momentous. You're not momentous. This thing you did, I mean, you can take that too far, but when it comes to changing, you can turn your back on this habit. You can turn your back on this image of yourself as perfect. Whatever it is that's holding you back, you can leave that behind. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to, you're trying to get better after all. So let it go. You know, it's going to make you better.
One of the things you were talking about earlier on your list of things about willpower, you said you need to know the why.
Yeah.
I would add one more, you need to know the who. Because strong enough does not mean we're relying on our own strength. We've said that. Mm-hmm. If we're self-reliant, we'll fail every time. Our strength to overcome comes from our ability to trust God and trust those around us. And the more we allow others to see our mistakes, the stronger we as a collective become. And I think of that passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 where it talks about the, one by himself will be overpowered, two will defend themselves, a cord of 3 strands will not easily be broken. What's that idea of by yourself, you're not strong. With one other person, you're getting strong. But when you got 3 people, then you're really starting to find some true strength. And I think it's interesting that in step 5 of every 12-step program out there, you've gone through step 4, which is you're making an inventory of your moral failures. And step 5 is you tell God, you tell your sponsor, and you tell another human being. So you're telling 3 people. And I don't think that's there by accident. I think it's that idea of there being a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And I think there's strength in that group. There's strength in togetherness. There's strength in openness with each other.
Yeah. That's good. It's a good quote, Tim. You know, of course, John Maxwell.
I don't think he has bad quotes, does he?
Well, this is
other than according to Drew.
I've had a personal conversation with John Maxwell.
Oh, wow.
We've met him.
We have
right?
met him. Absolutely.
So I'll just real
I wasn't
quick,
invited on that trip.
No, I don't. You were probably at work, but I'll just tell you word for word what he said. I remember it like it was yesterday. I believe it. He looked at me, and he pointed at me, and he said, "Go." Because now here's the rest of the story. So Tim and I went to hear him speak, and he had a book for sale. And we bought the book, or I did. Did you get a book autographed?
I think I did, yeah.
You might have brought one from home. I can't remember, but I bought a book there. And we had to get in line, and he told us ahead of time, because he's Mr. Productivity, right? Don't want to waste any second. I want to get as much done and cram everything into a minute that I can. And he said, here's how it's going to work. You're going to come up to me in line. You're going to give me your name. I'm going to sign your book, and you're going to move on. So when I got up to him, he just went, "Go." And I said, "Drew." And he just wrote, "Drew, John Maxwell." Now, I didn't even get a Drew.
Drew, right.
I felt like the kids that went to see Santa in the Christmas Story. One of you have seen the Christmas
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's you that's seen it. You know, they go to see Santa and they can't say anything. They're frozen, they're paralyzed with fear. That was me. And so all I got is Drew, John Maxwell.
Well, just remember that when you're signing all the copies of Burdens, which you can pick up on Amazon or Riddle Creek Publishing.com,
yes,
correct?
That's right.
That's right.
You
Available
need to
online
make sure
right
you
now.
put it in there to whoever loved Drew. You got to put love Drew, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be more than John Maxwell does. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have to come to my book reading.
Oh yeah.
Which is
I'll show up
to
for
be
that.
determined time. Way into the distant future. After I become an Amazon bestseller.
Hey, I can wrap this back around with a signed book by Bear Bryant if we want to close with.
We can close however you want.
So when I was about 10 years old, Bear Bryant came to Oxford for the opening of a bank, and he was there and would sign autographs and things. And so my dad had the book entitled Bear, and we took it to get it signed or whatever. And so I had it in line with with the 8x10 picture of the bear or whatever, and so I go up and I hand him the book, my dad's book, and they say, "What's your name?" And I said, "Tim," apparently, because that book to this day says "To Tim, Bear Bryant" in my dad's book. So I have that on my bookshelf, and I cherish that.
I would hold on to that.
I don't know how much my dad cared for that, but I got I got his book autographed to me.
Just answering the question.
That's right. Yeah.
At least he asked you a question, you didn't just say, go. All right, well, it's time for us to go, and we appreciate everybody joining us. Stay tuned for more episodes.